time is 3:47 a.m. on Wednesday, November 12, 1986. I am sleeping in the living room of a cottage at the American Academy of Rome. I am sleeping on the living room couch. I am sleeping on the couch because the producers of the opera we are performing in Rome are short of money. They arranged for me to sleep at the American Academy to save money. The apartment at the American Academy has 2 bedrooms but no heat. 2 people from the opera ensemble are sleeping in the bedrooms. They are sleeping in the bedrooms because the hotel the producers provide is a miserable wreck. The hotel is typical in Rome at that time. 1 room has no glass in the windows, and so it is too cold to live in. The other room has a shower with no stall, so that when the occupant takes a shower, there is water all over the hotel room floor. We can't change hotels because the producers are friends of mine, and I know that they have very little money. Everybody else in the ensemble seems to have a room that is at least usable. So I invite the 2 people with the bedrooms to share my accommodations at the American Academy. At 3:47 a.m., something, a person, or this is hard to believe, an animal, begins pulling the covers off of my bed from the foot of the bed. I grab the covers from my chest and begin pulling to keep them on me. There is a short but strenuous tug of war, and then it ends. I know the time exactly because there is a floor lamp next to my head, and I immediately turn it on and look at my watch. Somehow the time seems important to remember. The tug of war over the covers wakes me completely because when I turn on the light, there is nobody in the room. Unlikely as it seems, I think first it is a kind of prank played by my 2 companions. I go to the 2 bedrooms to look in on my companions, and they are both fast asleep. I spend a few minutes searching the apartment for some kind of animal that might be responsible, never believing that it could be an animal. And then I get up and get dressed and sit at the kitchen table having a drink, smoking a cigarette and puzzling over the event. After an hour or so, I go back to bed. The next 5 nights after rehearsals and then performances, my 2 friends and I huddle in our overcoats in the cold apartment, having a drink and joking about the tug of war. I tell them about it in detail more than once, stressing the mysterious quality of the event. The day after the last performance, I come back to New York. I arrive at about 7 p.m. I am home only a few minutes when the phone rings, and the wife of a very dear and longtime friend calls to say that her husband, my friend, is dead. As a victim of death, he is very young, about 40 years old. She tells me briefly about his death. The cause is cancer. He confronts cancer in a way typical for him. Very bravely, curiously, she mentions the time of his death. I wake in the middle of the night to an amazing thought. The coincidence of the time of his death in Arizona and the mysterious tug of war in Rome. I call her the next day. We go over the details of his death. He learns of his very advanced and incurable cancer even as they are moving into a new house. She says the house has a beautiful backyard with a view of the sky. My friend decides simply to sleep on a mat in the backyard for the last 2 weeks of his life. He says he enjoys the night view of the sky. His wife is with him the whole time. I confirm with her then the exact time of his death. She tells me that she feels the exact time of his death is very important. She writes it down. I calculate the time difference between the 2 places, Rome and Arizona. The coincidence between the time of his death in Arizona and the time of the business of the blankets being pulled from my bed in Rome is exact to the minute. I can't explain this to myself in any way. I should say that maybe 6 weeks before his death he calls me and says he would like to visit me in New York. I make the excuse that I'm preparing for the performances in Rome and suggest that he put off the visit until I get back. He says very casually, "I'll probably be dead by then." I think this is some sort of joking remark provoked by my asking him to put off the visit, and we continue talking about the most trivial things for almost an hour. The telephone call is important. For many years he calls me every few weeks. I always enjoy the calls. He has that peculiar gift, rare in most people, to call when I most need to talk to someone. Even though he is 16 years younger than I am, and we spend many years apart, I consider him to be one of my closest friends. I think our friendship is, in an unusual way, a telephone friendship. We meet when he comes to my home one evening late after my work. I work until 9 p.m. every night. For a few weeks before we meet, my wife tells me that a very young man, a teenager, appears at the door in the early evening, dressed in an elegant black suit with a shirt and tie, wearing a cashmere overcoat, with a white scarf draped over one arm. He asks to see me. She tells him that I am not at home and asks him to wait. He always replies, "I'll come back." Finally, then he comes when I am at home. He is dressed exactly as my wife describes him. We talk for quite a while. He is producing a radio program on an independent station in Detroit. He knows my music. He asks me to help him get tapes of the most contemporary music to play on his program. We begin a long friendship, and I realize almost immediately that he is a very unusual and peculiar person. These are the days of a very active social and artistic life, with late parties almost every night at my house or at a friend's house nearby. Many times I notice that with at least 10 people in a room talking and drinking, when my friend walks in, all conversation stops for a minute. It is as if people are momentarily afraid. Everybody comes to know him as my friend, and he is always welcome. But there is always, too, that peculiar moment of his entrance. He makes life an adventure for himself. He tells me that he never takes the same route from where he lives some 30 miles away to visit me. He gets involved with the music scene in Detroit where Motown rules, and tries to promote the careers of 2 young black women who are singing on Motown records anonymously and probably not getting paid. Motown is getting it for nothing, so he can't make any inroads there, and so he begins producing records independently. In Detroit, this is a dangerous business, especially for a young white man, and so he starts carrying a gun. At a drive-in on 8 Mile Road, 2 black kids come to the car. "What's a white boy like you doing with those 2 black girls in the car?" My friend takes out his gun and says, "We think we will get a hamburger and some French fries." Well, do enjoy those fries. And the business is dangerous, too, in the matter of trying to get into the independently recorded record business. Format radio is so pervasive now, where every tune is scheduled and timed to the second, with the DJ filling the time between the very end of the singing on one tune until the moment of the beginning of the singing on the next, has arrived in Detroit in force, literally in force. If the DJ substitutes an independently produced tune for one of the tunes paid for in the format, he gets a call of warning from one of the listeners. He gets a threat. This is the music business in Detroit. The prime time DJ, 6 to 10 p.m. at the only black music station in Detroit, unwisely decides to get into the independent recording game himself. He starts substituting tunes in which he and my friend have an investment for the tunes in the format. After a couple of warnings, the DJ comes home to find his apartment totally destroyed. But the DJ is young and reckless. If a tune is a hit, it sells thousands of those 45s at 99 cents each in the mom-and-pop record stores all around Detroit. You can make a small fortune in a couple of months, but few do it because of the danger. Finally, the DJ gets the ultimate warning by telephone one night when he is on the air. He asks the engineer to cue up the next record. I have to go to the toilet. He gets in his car and drives to his mother's house in Pittsburgh. He calls my friend. "Take anything you want from the apartment." Wisdom prevails. My friend says to me, "Only a crazy man would go to that apartment." My friend moves to Los Angeles to find a different kind of action, and that's when the phone calls begin. He takes any kind of job that is different. He helps to organize orgy parties where all kinds of celebrities attend. He apprentices with a legendary door-to-door salesman in aluminum siding. Get the wife to sign the contract in the afternoon, come back in the evening before the husband gets home, sit in the husband's chair, and present the husband with a done deal, no way out. He works in boiler rooms, selling diamonds as tax shelters to people in remote places who don't know the value of a diamond but have lots of money. He says old ranchers are good marks. They keep their money under the mattress. I learn about tax shelters. And every few weeks I get a call with all of the details and a droll humor. And then selling diamonds as tax shelters becomes a private full-time business for him. He strikes out on his own. He is good at it. He has immediate success. He makes a lot of money. He has a house in an expensive street with movie stars as neighbors. I visit once. Except for the gaudily expensive furniture, the house is empty. The refrigerator is empty. He sleeps on a mattress on one of the floors of one of the bedrooms. We go to an expensive restaurant and I go home. In person, the drollery is gone. There is a strange sadness about the expensive home. He lives alone. He lives like a ghost in his own life. I feel that he needs the telephone in order to be complete. For the time, I am hard to get in touch with because I have no phone. He visits me and seems relaxed at my relative poverty. He makes me laugh. How do you close a deal on aluminum siding? Make sure you sit in the husband's chair. I move to New York and the phone calls become almost regular. Problems develop. A serious criminal is jealous of my friend's success in selling diamonds. There are warnings. A meeting is demanded. My friend's girlfriend at that time meets the two enforcers in the coffee shop on the ground floor of his office building. As instructed, she invites them to a meeting in my friend's office. The enforcers enter the office where they meet my friend with a gun in his hand, ready for use. The enforcers leave without speaking. The next day, all of the windows in his office are blown out by gunfire. My friend goes into the real estate business in Phoenix, Arizona. He sends me a brochure about a city he is developing near Phoenix. Gilbert is the name of the development. In a note he says, if this projection works out, by the year 2000, this will be Planet Gilbert. My friend moves to New York and begins writing a puzzling but amazing book about life. I won't speak about the book. It is too personal. In New York, he visits very rarely, very discreetly. I sense in my wife the same moment of fear that I remember from years before. He is too formal to the point of stiffness. He is too overdressed to be casual. It is as if we have nothing to talk about. I begin to understand the challenge in being around him. He isn't at home in New York. He is totally alone, but without the consolation of the telephone. He moves back to Phoenix where he hopes the climate for selling diamonds over the telephone will be better because he is unknown there. My wife and I visit once. He has found a woman who truly loves him. They live in a very modern house, gaudy as usual, but somehow more lighthearted. We are taken on a long, leisurely, almost meditative nighttime drive around Phoenix, which is a beautiful city for exactly that kind of drive. My wife and I leave the next day and return to New York. The telephone calls become more frequent. Every call lasts a long time, but it is impossible to remember at all what we talked about. There is the feeling of simply being in touch with each other. The only conversation I remember comes from my complaining about the difficulties of having my work in music produced. He says, but you have made an ideal life. You can do anything you want to do and nobody can hurt you. This is an important lesson for me. I never complain again, even to myself. There are no more incidents recounted in the phone calls than I can remember. We simply talk for a long time on the phone every few weeks. I never call him. He calls me. Finally, there is the phone call about his wanting to visit me in New York, and my innocent refusal. He dies. Except for my call to his widow the next day to confirm the coincidence of his death with my experience of the visitor in the night in Rome, I am not in touch with his widow. It seems proper that our relationship should remain untouched and uncontaminated by commonplace ideas. In the way I think of our long friendship now, he calls and I don't answer. So he comes to see me to say goodbye, with humor as usual, in a way that is beyond the realm of our understanding. I believe he wants to call me in Rome, but he can't.